Bryan Ray, America's Rugby News, Major League Rugby 2023 preview. The Utah Warriors. Well, a season of change last year. After winning only 2 games in the first half of the season, they opted to let Sean Pittman go as head coach. Just a year before, he was MLR's Coach of the Year. So Sean Davies and Robbie Abel given the reins, the 2 assistants, to take him the rest of the way. They picked up 3 wins, so certainly ended the season in better shape. The coaching search began once they let Pittman go, and now they have Greg Cooper coming in, the former All Black, who's got a pretty impressive coaching resume. He coached the Highlanders, he's coached Otago, New Zealand under 21s, spent some time in Japan with Mitsubishi, so certainly a hugely experienced coach coming in to help them, and that'll make a big difference, I'm sure. You know, they struggled really to put 80 minutes of great rugby together last year. Looked good in spurts, but you know, at times maybe getting a little bit too fired up when they get closer to scoring position, making crucial mistakes at times. But you've certainly got some good recruitment. I'm sure Cooper will kind of help them in the mental side of the game. So let's look at some of the changes they've made. You know, injuries in particular really hampered them in the second row last year. Jamie Lane only played 6 games, then he was done for the campaign. Thomas Tuivau ended up playing a whole lot of lock. He's not a lock, he's a flanker. So let's look at some of the changes of the guys from last year that are not returning this year. Now, amazingly, every single one of their front rowers are back. Chad Goff, their one-time Eagle, announced his retirement and looked like he was done, but he's now been convinced to come back for the start of the season because it looks like one of their recruits is a little bit delayed in arriving anyway. So we're going to leave him on there. David Beach came over on loan from Old Glory, played I think 3 games with them. He's now returned to Old Glory. He was helping fill in that second row problem. James Mackey played a couple games, local guy, just didn't really kick on, so he is not back. Punavuli, unfortunately, he looked pretty decent, but he has signed a contract in Japan, so he is gone as well. In the back row, Carson Shoemaker didn't actually play with the Warriors last season. He went on loan, played a couple games with Dallas. He's now moved to Dallas permanently, so he is gone. Mike Gieselman traded to Seattle, but then didn't end up signing with them. I think he's now back in Detroit playing club rugby there, so Mike Gieselman is gone. And Terrace Schramm, another local flanker, I think he only played 1, maybe 2 games last season. So really, the bulk of their forwards are going to be returning this coming season. At the halfbacks, again, the only one who's departed actually is Danny Christensen, popular local guy who took a while to get into MLR, but did all right when he got there. He's now gone to Dallas. Caleb McInerney, Colson Warner are returning. The whole midfield, all of these guys returning. In the back line, James Vaifale, originally traded to NOLA, now ending up in Dallas. And Mikey Teo choosing to go back to San Diego, joining the Legion. You know, he was maybe not quite at his best last season. By the end of the campaign, he was kind of more of a bench guy coming on. It's because they got some impressive outside backs here. So Mikey Teo is gone. So when you look at it, not a whole lot of departures there, all things considered. The bulk of their starting lineup is there, all the main players. So a nice starting point for Utah, and more a case of building on what they have. And, you know, they certainly took some steps in the offseason. They created this Crossroads Cup, a local competition, to have a look at some of the young local talent that worked out well for them. And they did okay in the draft, you'd have to say, as well. So there's the remains of your 2022 roster. Next, we'll look at 2023. Okay, Utah's recruits for 2023. We're actually going to start at hooker. I mentioned Chad Goff opting not to retire, sticking around for at least a couple months anyways. That's because Otago hooker Henry Bell's arrival is a little bit delayed. He's on the verge of a Super Rugby deal, really. His brother plays for the Crusaders, starter for Otago in the NPC. I'm certain that when he shows up, he will be the starter at hooker, so we're going to throw him in there. So you've got Bell, Goff, maybe they can convince him to stick around a little longer. Tuvere Vugakoto, their Fijian international, still around. And Joey Baki continuing his full-time conversion from the back row to the front row. Loosehead prop, the usual suspects here: Franco Vandenberg, Ollie Khalifi, Emerson Pryor. Kind of a surprise package last year. Canadian, played for Canada A. Really looked good towards the end of the season, so expect a little bit more from him this year. Gabe Kettering from Lindenwood. They picked him up in the collegiate draft. Now, he had shoulder and knee surgery in the off season, so not sure we're going to be seeing too much of him this year, but certainly one for the future. Over at tight head, I mean, we've already got impressive depth. The two Eagles, Paul Mullen, Angus McClellan, Elijah Hayes, a USA Falcons select himself. Limited action last year. I think he only played one game because he had a knee injury, but he's back. Two new recruits here. Takaji Young Yen coming in from New Zealand. He actually played, I think, for the New Zealand school side. He's certainly played alongside a couple All Blacks along the way. Was just playing club rugby down there. He's actually born in Utah, so US eligible. Very handy pickup. Really looked good in the Crossroads Cup competition. And Sam Buckley, another Lindenwood prop. He's actually from England, played in the Northampton Saints Academy. Now, he's not US eligible yet. Another year and he will be, so kind of more of a project. Again, another one of these guys where we're not quite sure if we're going to see a lot of them this season. Second row, the old warhorse Saya Uhila returning again. Jamie Lane fit hopefully for the full season this time. He was starting with Auckland in the off season, and they've picked up Onahunga Havili. He's a Tongan international. He's played, most recently in France. Spent a little time with Exeter in England. Actually played a bit of Super Rugby with the Western Force. Prefers the back row, more of a 6 or 8, but on this team, looking at their lineup, he's going to be playing lock for the most part to start anyways. So we're going to put him here at our number 4 along with Jamie Lane. Uhila is getting up there. He's more of a, come off the bench and wreak havoc type of role at this stage. Jonah Dietenberg coming in from the San Diego Legion. We'll throw Uhila over here as well. Knocking Jamie Lane out of the way. Jonah Dietenberg coming in, picked up the trade that sent Mikey Teo over to San Diego. They got Dietenberg in return. They wanted a little bit more depth at lock. He actually toured with the Falcons, former Lindenwood guy, 6'6", nice height on him. So certainly a prospect there. And another big lump from Tennessee, picked up in the collegiate draft, Greg Janowick. This guy is, he looks like a specimen anyways. It's going to be very interesting to see. He's actually trimmed down from around 300 pounds to 260, 265. So really interesting to see how he goes. Back row, Lance Williams finally gets a little bit of USA rep rugby in, playing with the USA Sevens. Personally would have had him in the Eagles. Yuri Van Voorden, again, returning at number 8, played with the Tel Aviv Heat in the offseason. And Bailey Wilson, again, the captain. Thomas Tuovau going back to the back row, definitely his preferred spot. A couple other loose forwards coming in. John Dupree from Central Washington. They picked up him in the collegiate draft, out-and-out open side flanker. And Jeremiah Noaesi. He's a youngster, played in that Crossroads Cup along with Young Yen. He certainly caught the eye. Probably not going to play a whole lot this season, but he's certainly a project guy for the future. Scrum half. Niall Saunders also played with Van Vuren at the Tel Aviv Heat in the off-season, and Zion Going, U.S. eligible, returning. Another name coming in, I'm just going to slide going down here, Connor McLeod coming in from Hawke's Bay, this quick New Zealander. Be interesting to see him, certainly competing with Saunders, probably for that starting role. And Ty Coway picked up in the first round of the draft, a good little project player, another guy who's played he can play center, can play scrum half, but probably scrum half is future anyways. So nice depth here at scrum half. Now at fly half, an interesting move. Caleb Makane, who did a fine job at 10 last season, but he is actually going to slide down here. I'm going to do a little musical chairs. Caleb Makane is going to be starting at fullback this season. That's probably his preferred position. He plays there a bit more in the NPC in the off-season. Joel Hodgson has come in, played England under-19, but he's spent a long time in the Premiership with the Newcastle Falcons, most notably. So Hodgson has come in. I think he's at least a 2-year contract, possibly 3, but he is definitely your starting 10. Colson Warner didn't get get a lot of time last year. He's in the mix, can also probably play in the outside backs. And a couple other youngsters, Danny Janiscoli, really nice to see him back in MLR. Really nice left boot on him. He's been playing with Schuylkill River. Really had to be in MLR. He was too good to be playing just club rugby. Nice to see him back. Hopefully he gets some time this season. And Sione Mahe, they just kind of added him, USA age grade player. He's played in like the Youth Olympic Sevens kind of deal. Talented youngster. So, you know, these three guys, probably more kind of an apprenticeship to see which one really stands out under Joel Hodgson. And they've still got Caleb Makade and Cliven Lobsher. They're a Namibian who can play 10 or 15 equally well. So a whole lot of depth at fly half this season. And I mean, Calvin Whiting has also done a job at playing 10 as well. Nice to see him re-sign. There was maybe a question of whether he was going to be back or not, but he is back, US Eagle. Of course, Paul Asike only played a handful, I think 4 games last season, only started 1. He came back late from England. He'll be back full-time, so I mean, he's your vice captain and certain to start at 12. You got Whiting, who can play 12 or 13. Tomasu Tonga, who came in and looked really impressive last year, played a number of games, local guy. Tyler Fisher, your big South African, at number 13. And Siausi Nauer, this youngster that they're working on, can play outside center or wing. Mika Cruze returning, another guy I think Greg Cooper mentioned he would also like to maybe look at him at outside center as well at some point, but also playing on the wing. Of course, Eagles select Joel Mano. Hopefully he gets through a full season fully fit. He's now US eligible again, having previously represented American Samoa at sevens. Connor Burns looked tremendous last season, bumped Teo out of a starting spot, really. Can play fullback, can play on the wing. I think he's a future Eagle once he is US qualified, which will be next season, along with Sam Buckley, so very handy. So, you know, his playing time, depending on how they use their imports this season, might not be as much as last year, but he's certainly one to watch. He's certainly got the talent. And another nice returnee from the USA Sevens program, Logan Tago, coming in, and he'll be on the wing. He's kind of playing a little bit of center before he'd gone to the Eagles, but they're really looking at him to be a big, bruising, powerful runner out wide. So I think this is a really impressive looking squad overall. If I had to pick one maybe shortcoming, maybe like to see one more loose forward maybe, but they've solved their second row problem. They've filled that in nicely with 3 big newcomers. Hopefully Lane is fit again. And again, Van Vuren can always fill in there as well. He's played a lot of lock. So overall, pretty good looking squad. You like the depth of the competition for spots at scrum half. Hooker looks really good now, especially with Goff sticking around a little longer. Tight head prop is ridiculous. To be honest, I kind of like to see them loan one of these 3 guys out, maybe to San Diego or a team that really needs them. I mean, there's just too much talent here for them just to be sitting around, holding tackle bags. So I think they should pick, Hayes or Young Yen or Buckley, one of these guys, and just let another team use them for this season and then bring them back next year. But anyways, there we go. Great looking squad. Now we're going to look at our match day 23. All right, what's Utah's ideal match day 23 going to look like this season? First thing we have to know, how many imports are they allowed in their match day squad? Utah's magic number is 9, one of 3 teams this season to be under that 10 mark. So let's see what we can do here. We'll start in the front row. Well, Franco Vandenberg definitely is your starting number 1. Continuing, Henry Bell, once he arrives, be your starting number 2. We'll put Paul Mullen here at number 3. He'll rotate a lot with Angus McClellan. Second rows, well, you got Onahunga Havili, our Tongan international, and Jamie Lane, our good line-out jumper from New Zealand, 6'7". Lance Williams and Bailey Wilson, our captain, 6 and 7. Yuri Van Vuren returning at number 8. I mean, the forward pack pretty much picks itself, the starters anyways. A little bit of competition where spots, we'll get to that in the reserves. Scrum half, now interesting, we've got Niall Saunders kind of the incumbent starter, but was under pressure from Zion going last year. But I think Connor McLeod, just judging by the preseason selection, seems to have the leg up at the moment. So I'm going to stick him there, but we'll put Saunders there as well. Those two really competing for that number 9 slot, which is nice to have. It's always good to have competition for spots. Joel Hodgson, definitely the number 10. In the back line, we've got, well, obviously we've got Lasike coming in at inside center. Probably Mika Kruse here at number 11. Joe Mano here, number 14. 15, we know it's going to be Caleb McInnes. So let's see where we're at the moment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're at 8. We've got 1 slot left. Now, I think, ideally probably put Tyler Fisher and have that big, powerful midfield, but that restricts what you can do here with your reserve. So let's just leave it as this at the moment. So we've used up all our import slots. What can we do on the bench? So in this situation at hooker, I mean, ideally you'd like to have Chad Goff sticking around. You can throw him there. But the other option, who isn't an import, would be Joey Baki. In order to get Tuvere Vugakoto in there, we'd have to take probably Tyler Fisher out and put Calvin Whiting in there. So that could be our other option. But let's continue on this vein over here. Loose head prop, as I mentioned, I think our young Canadian Emerson Pryor is going to get a bit more game time this season. We'll put him there, but also Ollie Khalifi returning as well. So the two of them competing for that reserve loose head spot. And at tight head, we've got Angus McClellan, Surly, and it looks like of the 3, the young tight head is in reserve. It looks like Takaji Young Yen, this one who's come in from New Zealand, seems to have the advantage, judging again by the preseason selections. So we're going to put him there as well. So I mean that looks pretty nice. Obviously Goff has a significant experience advantage on Baki, but otherwise good competition here. Young and established, kind of competing for that reserve role. Nice to have some options there. Second row, definitely you're going to look for Saya Uhila, but again, we've got a couple youngsters here who maybe can put their hand up as well. Certainly Jonah Dietenberg, you would expect him to step up after playing with the Falcons, but also Greg Janowick. He's this great mystery guy. What exactly is he going to bring? Is he going to be able to make this step up? I wouldn't put too much expectations on him in his first season, but who knows? We'll certainly put him in the mix. Nice to have options again. Loose forward reserve, certainly Thomas Tuivasa. I don't think there's any debate there. He'll be in the match day 23 more often than not. Reserve scrum half, Zion going, US eligible. Perfect for our number 21. 22, I mean, we've got our young fly halves, but McInnes can step in at fly half, and so can Calvin Whiting. So we're going to put him there because he's great. He can play 10, he can play 12, he can play 13, and that's if you don't start him alongside Lasike in the midfield. And our outside back, well, I think, you're probably going to have to look at Logan Tago here because he's your next best domestic option. Now, I mean, the guys you'd like to have in the mix, certainly Connor Burns, Cliven Loubser. But again, these guys are imports. We just can't fit them in the 23 here. I mean, you could go Tomasi Tonga here as a reserve, but I don't think you would do that if you've got Whiting, who kind of covers the same role. Tonga might have a little bit less playing time this season because of Lasike's full-time return. So I guess the other option would be if we take Fisher out, then you can put Whiting in here. And now you can kind of make a decision. You've got Vugakoto, you could slot him as your reserve hooker. You could bring in Cliven Loubser if you wanted here as kind of a 10-15. You could bring in Connor Burns, and then you kind of, so I guess that would be kind of where you'd see Tonga come in. You could put Tomasi Tonga in there as your midfield reserve, and then Connor Burns as your outside back, and then McInnes can step up into 10, something like that. Yeah, so that's I think what we're looking at here. I think it'll be a bit more with Tyler Fisher in there personally, Burns out and Tago, and then Whiting down here. That seems to be the most likely scenario. But We've got nice options here. We've got good depth. We've talked about the front row. Certainly their tight head options are as good as any in MLR. The hooker options look good. I think they'll try and maybe convince Goff to stick around just a little bit. Like if they can get him, convince him to stick around for the whole season, it would be great. He's not over the hill. I think he's 30 years old, so certainly, he's got it in him if he wants to. Second row, they seem to have solved that puzzle. Lane and Havili coming in, two strong starters and good competition for that reserve spot, and they can slot in there. I think the back row, as I mentioned, could maybe use one more experienced body in there, but the starters look good. Tuavau, very handy. Reserve can come in and play anywhere. You probably put Williams at 8 and Tuavau at 6 kind of thing. Competition for starting scrum half. McLeod looks like he's getting the edge here, so that's nice to have. You've got Joel Hodgson, this experienced fly half coming in, which is maybe as good as McInerney did last year. Hodgson's just going to bring a different look there, maybe a little bit more of a traditional, controlling the game style 10. So certainly they'll look to his experience a lot. Lasike returning is huge for them. I mean, he gets you on the front foot every time. And then if you got these two in the centers, I mean, that's enormous. That's the biggest midfield in MLR. So you're going to be making it over the gain line. And then you get, Mika Kruse working his magic at his best. He was a little bit injured last year. Maybe that cost him an Eagle spot in the repechage. Not entirely sure. And Joe Mano, now that he's US eligible, very handy again. He's looked great when he's on the field. It's just a matter of keeping him there, right? Look at that option that Cooper was discussing in the preseason. It was Kruse at 13 and Toggle on the wing. I mean, that looks pretty menacing there. And then you can put, Fisher or Burns or whoever on the bench. I mean, you've got a lot of options, a lot of things you can play with in this lineup. And I just think it looks good. They're going to be tough. This is certainly a step up, and the depth is the biggest thing, having those options that they can choose from. So I think this is going to be a big step up, I think, from this past year. I think we'll see more consistent performances from this team under Greg Cooper. Now, that said, the Western Conference looks brutally competitive this coming year. I mean, it was, last year we saw Austin and LA kind of stretching away from the pack, but this year we've got Houston, we've got San Diego, we've got Utah, and of course we got Seattle, who made it all the way to the final last year. Those four, I think, are the real big ones, all competing for those 3 spots. It's going to be very tight. You can't give away any games this season. Really looking forward to it. So I can't say whether these guys are going to make the playoffs or not. I'm definitely putting them in the top 4, and I think it's going to be just by 1 or 2 points that whoever of those 4 teams doesn't make it misses out. So really looking forward to that playoff run in the West. It's going to be super exciting. This looks like an exciting team. Utah fans should be absolutely thrilled with what they're going to have on the field this year. So there you go. Really positive on Utah this season. Let me know what you think. MLR 2023 Utah Warriors.